Good afternoon, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started with our media conference with Coach Hodge. Reminder, please use the raise hand feature to ask a question. And Coach, why don't you start off by giving us an update since we last met after our last non-conference game on December 22nd, and we'll take questions.
Uh, yeah, not a whole lot to update. Guys got back on the 27th. Been practicing. Looking forward to the start of Big 12 play, so can really get right to it.
We'll go first to Spencer.
Hey Ross, when you look at Iowa State's offense, what do you what have you seen from them? And they kind of pass the ball around. Is that kind of what you see?
Well, a lot of it starts with their defense, and obviously they're one of the best defensive teams in the country. They do an elite job of turning, your turnovers into points. They lead the country in turnover percentage. They're turning people over about 25% of the time. So one out of every four offensive possessions, they're turning it over. And um, Jefferson's playing at an elite level, as good as he was last year. He's probably got to be one of the most improved players, in the country. Shooting the ball, draws fouls, can kind of make plays for others. Obviously, Momcilovic is one of the best shooters in the country, and then, Lipsey's experience at the point, and they play really well together and play with good pace, and they're good.
Kevin?
Coach, when you're going into these games, how much is based on what you think you do well and how you can attack your opponent versus how much trying to stop or slow what they do well or maybe take advantage of things they don't do well that might not be your strengths?
Yeah, it's combination of both. You're always gonna tweak some things going into each of these games, depending on other teams' base coverages and what they do defensively, and where you feel like you can have some advantages, and obviously you want to try to play to those, and then yeah, defensively, same to answer your question, you're spending equal amount of time trying to figure out ways to slow them down and take them out of things they may like to do.
And then are there teams that you have had that have been really flexible and good at making those changes game to game and week to week? And where do you think this one might be?
Yeah, I think good teams, great teams, they can win games kind of multiple ways, and they can win it. They can grind games out when necessary, and they have the offensive firepower to score. If they need to win the game that way, that's the more ways you can win a game, the better you're going to be. And and as far as where our team is on that spectrum, again, we're still trying to figure that out ourselves, and again, we've shown glimpses in games where we feel like we have a good formula, and then you know we've had other parts of those games where we haven't executed at the level that we've wanted to on both ends of the floor.
Cody?
Hey Ross, going into conference play, do you like to tell the team that, it's kind of start of a new season, or, it's kind of a reset, or do you like them to kind of think about the whole year, as a whole?
I mean, really, neither, to be honest. You're really just, um, obviously everyone knows it's the start of Big 12 play, and but all games matter, especially when you're talking about trying to get at large bids and NCAA tournament ramifications. There's not a game on your schedule that doesn't matter, or has least or more significance. So you really don't spend a lot of time talking either or. Really just uh, like for this instance, just been talking about Iowa State and where we feel like what we got to do to beat those guys.
Mike?
Oh, hey, coach. So you obviously are tipping off Big 12 play with a top tier team, and you're starting it off maybe tougher than anybody else in the conference. How does opening up on national TV for the conference against an Iowa State type of team impact your strategy even in that game? Like you might have to show the whole thing in the kitchen sink in this game one, rather than if it was a bottom team, maybe you could hold things close and hold them to when you would face the Iowa States of the world later on. And how much did that even impact your prep during this break that, hey, we have potentially the best team in the conference in game one compared to if you were able to wait for them?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't think we're not in a situation where we would really hold anything back. Regardless of who you were playing, you try to go win that game, and I think more than anything, as it pertains to this one, again, you're going to have to play well. You're going to have to play good stretches of basketball to give yourself a chance, and you've got to try to, um, you got to try to, minimize the length of their runs, knowing that they're going to go on some runs in that building. You just don't want them to be elongated, and there's, again, you really got to just there's 10 4-minute games, and you got to try to play, you know, each one of those 4-minute games and try to win each little 4-minute segment of that game and keep the game intact, and give yourself a chance.
Taylor?
Coach, just talking about your non-conference play, whenever you go back and watch film, are you watching more of the execution side of things, offensively and defensively, or are you looking at that along with the character of your guys, how they're reacting to certain things, the body language and stuff like that as you head into Big 12 play?
Yeah, again, both. I felt like our body language, even in the midst of some tough losses, and our togetherness was really good in those stretches. When I go back and look at those now, more so you're looking at execution. Where did the breakdowns occur? Was there anything coming out of Christmas break that you could work on and modify and tweak to, eliminate some of the things that were giving you problems on both ends of the floor? But again, I think our togetherness, our body languages, our attitudes, how they've supported each other through tough times. I thought that was, good in the midst of winning and losing. And so when I go back and look now, again, it's more through the lens of, what happened, why did it happen, and how can we prevent it from happening in the future.
And then following up with that, obviously you want to focus on Iowa State, but then you play Cincinnati, then you play Kansas, and then Houston. What are you wanting to learn from your team in these first 4 games of Big 12 play?
I mean, you're always learning about your team, again, especially when it's a new team and everything's a new experience. So, going in Friday, it'll be our first, Big 12 game together. It'll be our first Big 12 road game together. It'll be our first true road game together. So, each game, each situation gives you an opportunity to learn more about your team and learn more about your group and grow and more than anything improve through these games.
Keenan?
Ross, you mentioned at-large bids. Is that something you kind of talk to about your team? Not necessarily the at-large part, but some of the metrics like the net and where they stand. Is that something you address, or is there a point in the season when you start doing that?
Yeah, we haven't addressed it a lot, and again, I think if you focus more on the things that put you in the positions that you want to be in, those things tend to work themselves out. If you spend too much time, and just again, in my opinion, if you spend too much time talking to your team about scenarios outside of what they can control in the immediate, which would be having good practices, good film sessions, good weight room sessions, good individual sessions. Like, typically, if you're doing those things, the rest takes care of itself. Understanding that when you get in the games, you got to make the plays to win the game. But we don't spend a lot of time talking about it. No.
Mike?
Hey Ross, how are you?
Hey, what's up, Mike?
Not much, thank you. You're talking about how you're still trying to learn things about your team here too. I wonder is Iowa State sits down and looks at you, Cincinnati, Kansas, Houston. Do you think they know who you are yet?
Um, I'm sure they have. Yeah, I mean, they're. I'm sure there's some things that they do know about us. Whether they're watching us on film or our personnel or things we like to do and things we like to go to. So, yeah, I think they probably have a good baseline understanding of what they're gonna see and but again, all of us, teams are always kind of morphing and changing and I don't think any of us are quite what we're going to be in a couple months from right now, them included. So yeah, I think everybody's evolving and in hopes that you're playing your best basketball when it matters most.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be too dramatic here, but you've talked about how you loved having that practice time because you were able to actually practice with your full lineups and, Chance and Jackson were late to the fold here. I'm just even looking at some of the lineups you've used and how infrequently you've used them, but they've had good results. I'm not saying your best is yet to come. That's obviously the goal, but you kind of feel like you're still in a formative stage, even, 13 games into this and just starting Big 12 play.
Yeah, yeah, because of what you said, just because of the amount of um, you know, time that we missed together via game, via practice. And again, it's really when you're able to establish a base identity of what you want to do and how you want to do it and who you want to do it with. And so yeah, so I'm still trying to figure out, hey, what are our best lineup combinations? What's your best defensive lineup? What's your best offensive lineup? Um, and that probably will be the case here for a little bit.
Bob?
Yeah, this is Hertz. Russ, have you paid attention at all to the uh, how shall I say it, flap that's going on between coaches and the NCAA over their ruling that some NBA guys that had I don't want to say played in the NBA, but had gone declared for the NBA, didn't sign a contract, whatever, can come back and play and where do you stand on the how should we put it, the rules of eligibility?
Yeah, I haven't. I mean, obviously, I was aware of it and saw it, and I've heard some of the commentary from some of the coaches. Me personally, I haven't put a ton of time and energy into it, other than just trying to understand exactly what are the rules and what can you do, and again, if it's within the if it's within the rule book and you can do it, you know, then I would imagine most people are going to try to give their programs any competitive advantage that they can have. So, um, I don't have like a strong opinion on that specific situation, other than, and I've mentioned this in the past, other than, and I think this is kind of what all coaches are asking for, really, is just, okay, what are the rules going to be? Can there be some level of consistency moving forward, with the set of rules that you're telling us to operate under? And I think that's all you can really ask, from a coaching standpoint, is just like, hey, like, okay, just tell us what we can and what we can't do, and what we can operate and how we can operate, and then it's on us to do the best we can within those rules. The issues have been the last few years is the rules are constantly changing, or in some situations they're kind of retroactively applied after something's already been done.
You might be on your second contract here before before they get that straightened out.
Let's hope so. Hope so. At least to the first part of your statement.
We'll go to Cody and then close with Mike.
Yeah, Ross, just as you watch Iowa State, would you call their offense selective, or I'm just wondering because their shooting percentages are so high, but it's not like they just throw shots up, willy-nilly. It seems like they're calculated the shots they know they can make, and that's what they take.
Well, they're very efficient. They're very efficient. Again, Momcilovic is, one of the best three-point shooters in the country. Jefferson is a much improved three-point shooter. Um, and Lipsey doesn't turn the basketball over. I mean, one of the best assist to turnover ratio guys in the country. Buchanan is very solidified in his role, and then you know, Torrey, the freshman, he probably impacts winning. He doesn't have like maybe the stats that jump out at you as a Diambasta or some of those other guys, but his impact on winning because of his ability to defend the ball is elite, and he may be as impactful as any freshman in the country. Again, what they do is they convert defense to offense at an elite level, and then when not, they are very efficient. They have different ways they can play through, and Jefferson, has really turned himself into a first team All American type of player up until this point, and he's kind of in that point forward role, and he can handle the ball, and he can pass the ball, and he can shoot the ball, and he draws fouls. So, they're extremely efficient. They do play a little faster than you think. Uh, like most really good defensive teams, they're going to guard you for long stretches of time if they don't turn you over. Um, and so that can make it look like the game's a little slower than it is, but they're opportunistic. They play with pace, they turn you over, they get the ball out, and then they got good efficient players, man, that are capable of making shots.
Sorry, we'll go to Mike A, then Mike C.
All right, Coach. I was actually going to go kind of where Bob went. So since he opened the door a little bit, you do play Baylor, who is kind of the team he was alluding to that just recently brought in a player that was formerly eligible for the NBA draft. That's at the end of the month. You're going to have some film, but first question is, how do you scheme against a player like that that's joining a team halfway through when you're not going to have that many games that he'll have played with that team? And then secondarily, since at least it's currently able to be done now, as we're waiting for all this arguing to finalize, would you be willing to bring a player aboard if you have the means and if the rule says you can midway through, or to what Mike C talked about earlier, is that actually potentially a negative of trying to gel and get a team together since you're still trying to put the team together right now?
Yeah, the first part of your question, again, you do have enough, that's a long time from now, really like a month,
Okay.
as far as kind of like
The
how
31st of January, yeah.
yeah, how they're going to implement them, what's his role going to be, what's he capable of. Obviously, you'll be able to look back at some of his, previous film from the European teams that he played on. At least give you an idea of kind of what he is and how they intend on using him. I'm not super familiar with him right now, like as far as what he
Okay.
is
Yeah.
or what he can do. But I do think you have enough time to kind of figure out, like at least from a strengths and weaknesses standpoint, like kind of what he's good at, what he's not good at, and how they tend to implement him into their team. And maybe he doesn't play that much at all for their team. You don't really know. Again, I don't know I don't
Yeah.
know the extent of what they're anticipating, him coming along for. And then to answer the second part of your question, I think like so many of these things now, like uh the situations are fluid, and I do think, and I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure that Baylor had a 5-man that went down with a season-ending injury, and maybe they've had another player that went down with a season-ending injury. And so if you were in a situation, if you had the scholarship or if you had the means to bring a player in and you were decimated in a particular area of your roster, then I don't think anyone would take offense, players included on your team, because they want to win. And so like if the kid could come in and help you win, or if you again, if just hypothetically, if we were down, like say when we had to start the season without Jackson, without a chance, and like say those guys were done, and that was your roster, and you could bring a player that could at least gave you 10 or 15 minutes, I think you'd have to look at that. Again, as long as the rules allow it, because again, like we're not setting the rules. Coach Drew didn't set that rule.
Right.
You
No,
know,
yeah, yeah.
and he found, he worked within the rules, and whether we think it's like, oh, well, you shouldn't do that. I mean, again, everybody's got to kind of do what's best for their program, which we're all going to do anyways, and again, if we think as a whole, if coaches think that's not good for the college game, well, then that's where leadership has to step in and decide that okay, we're not going to do that anymore.
Thank you.
Mike C. Mike C.
Awesome. Larry, Stacy, ever give you any stories about Hilton Magic?
Oh yeah, I heard a lot about them, man. Like they obviously they had a great run when coach was there. I mean, they won the regular season Big 12 back-to-back years, and yeah, he just talked about, they'd have the floor vibrating and the backboard shaking with noise, and always talked about how, special Ames was, and what they were able to accomplish during his time period there.
You've been asked a bunch about opponents and opportunities, and you kind of treat it like every game is the same. I understand that, but venues are a little bit different, not rivalries, not matchups. But this is one, Houston will be a different one. Fog Allen will be actually that's here. I don't know, just as I wonder if like a fan of the game as you are you interested in, I don't know, like you're as a competitor going
Yeah,
out on some of these floors and taking on some of, never mind the
yeah.
teams,
I
but the
mean,
crowds and the auras.
as a competitor, I mean, you wanna play against the best, in the best environments, and certainly Iowa State's one of the best teams in the country. What TJ's done there the last 4 or 5 years are, incredible, and again, in a lot of ways, um, you know, set a standard for what, I think any of us would like your program to look like, man. He's been able to develop players, their players get better. They've been one of the best defensive teams in the country, and again, I think they have one of the best home court advantages in the country and one of the best fan bases. So, certainly from a competitive standpoint, it's what you want to be a part of. You want to be a part of these games, and knowing going into it that you maybe you don't have to play perfect per se, but you better have perfect intentions on what you're trying to do, and you're not going to be able to play very many stretches of non quality basketball. That's for sure.
Last question from Kevin.
Coach, understanding this is a bit in the future, but the agreement of the Big 12 with the Players Era tournament that the top 8 finishers in the league standings get an automatic invite to next year's event with a guaranteed payout. Is that important to you? Is that something that if you're, not in contention for the regular season league championship going down the stretch, that it's something that you can sell to your players, work with your players and say, hey, look, we can, do this for next year in addition to what we're working for this year?
Yeah, Kevin, that's a good question. And, I do think there's an excitement associated with the Players Era and the opportunities there. I don't think it's something that you're going to talk to your team, much about, because actually the way that it's going to be layered, to my understanding, is maybe that like it's going to be 2 years out actually. So like the top 8 from this year won't go next year. You would go in 27. And again, I don't know if that's like all the way ironclad done, but that's what's been discussed. And with that being said, unfortunately, in the time period that we're in with the transfer portal and like, I mean, you're sitting there talking to your team about what could happen in 2 years. They're going to be looking at you like I mean, and so I do think if you get an opportunity to be part of that, that probably means it's a byproduct of more so. Yeah, maybe you didn't win the league, but if you finish in the top 8 in the Big 12, you're an NCAA tournament team. So if you're really trying to, reach your ultimate goals, which is be part of the NCAA tournament, play for NCAA championships, then the players era comes with that. And I do think it's something that's exciting to be a part of. And, given the opportunity, we'd love to be a part of it.
Coach, this will wrap up our call. Thanks for your time. Thanks everybody for calling in, and Happy New Year.
Thank y'all. Y'all be safe.